الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
صلى اللهم على آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين. قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه العزيز: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولله المشرق والمغرب فأينما تولوا فثم وجه الله. صلوات على محمد وعلى محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
As followers of the school of Ahlul Bayt, we are presented with two of the greatest miracles that ever existed in all of humanity. Previously, in the last few lectures, I had mentioned that the Quran is proof that the Nabuwah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is continuing. Because if the Quran, if his Nabuwah was limited to a certain people, to a certain place and time, his miracle would also be limited to that certain place and time. But the Quran is the ultimate, one of the most sublime proofs of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I don't mean just by that the physical book that we have in the Mus'haf, no. As followers of the school of Ahlul Bayt, we believe that Rasulullah says, "Inni tarikum fikum muthaqalain kitab Allahi wa itrati Ahlul Bayti." That I leave behind me two weighty things: the book of God and my Ahlul Bayt. And in some traditions, he says the former is weightier than the other. In another tradition, it says, in another narration of that same tradition, he says 3 times, I remind you specifically concerning my Ahlul Bayt. I remind you specifically concerning my Ahlul Bayt. I remind you specifically concerning my Ahlul Bayt. The idea, and I mentioned this yesterday as well, the character of Prophet Muhammad is the greatest miracle of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The physical book Quran is dependent on the veracity of the character of Prophet Muhammad. If Prophet Muhammad could do not have sinned even a single mistake, the Arabs would have found that fault in him and they would have said, "This is your fault, Muhammad, therefore you are not qualified to be a prophet." But the fact is that Prophet Muhammad's prophecy itself does not begin, not even when he is physically born into this world. He says, "I was a prophet when Adam was between earth and water." He was existed there as Nabi before Adam in the form of Nur Muhammadi, which is also Nur Alawi, which is also Nur Fatimi, Hassani, Husseini. Indeed, when we say Awwaluna Muhammad, Awsadana Muhammad, Akhiruna Muhammad, Kulluna Muhammad, as the Prophet Christian states, the first is Muhammad, the second is Muhammad, the third is Muhammad, the final is Muhammad. All of these are names of the Muhammadan light. So the Prophet is a prophet before Adam. Prophet is a prophet before Adam. His prophecy extends throughout time. That's what that means. When he is born into the physical world, in Amul Fil, the year of the elephant, that is the time where not the outward proclamation, but the proclamation through akhlaq of the prophecy of Prophet Muhammad begins. And he is that character that the Arabs, they gave him the title Sadiq and Amin. And they could never take that title back from him. If Prophet Muhammad had made the slightest mistake, not sin, not haram, not guna, slightest mistake, then this whole message would have been completely turned upside down. But the fact of the matter is, at the time of the proclamation of his prophecy, when he started to openly proclaim, he went up, I believe it's Jabal Abi Qubais, he went up to the mountain, And he said to his people, O Quraysh, what if I told you there was an army behind this mountain that wanted to fight you? And they said, Muhammad, you are Sadiq. We will believe you. He said, what if your eyes saw that there was no army? They say, we would think that our eyes were deceiving us, not that you were lying to us. Not that you were lying to us, our eyes were deceiving us. We would not believe ourselves, we would believe you. When the Arabs, when the Quraysh would go on journeys, they would leave their belongings, in the banks they have vaults. And women and people who have jewelry, they put money and all their good stuff in the bank. So Prophet Muhammad was the bank for these people. Whenever they would go on the journey, and his idea was whatever they left, wherever they left it, it was there. He was not touching it until they got back. That is the level of his character. This character is the ultimate proof of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because had he lied, the Arabs would have said, this is your lying, Muhammad. They called him a lot of names. Sha'ir, Majnoon. They call his revelation Sihr al-Mubin. Sha'ir, meaning he's a poet. Yeah. So they called him a poet. Poetry, by the way, is a good thing in Islam. I'm not saying badly, but they're calling him a poet was that they wanted to say you are going against logic. This does not make sense. Poetry, especially the poetry of Muhammad, is recommended, but poetry goes on excess. Meaning a poet, he exaggerates. He fluffs up the words and arguments and everything. So they were saying this is all fluff, this is all nonsense. Sihr al-Mubin, this is magic. But they could not say he is not Sadiq. They called him everything. And Prophet Muhammad was tortured, left, right, and center. Not only by the Arab and by the Quraysh men, but by the children. You see, in the life of Prophet Muhammad, please be Allah. When Prophet Muhammad started declaring his prophecy, the first incident that he declared his prophecy was Ashira, Ashira, where he invited his close family members, and he said, the first night he got up, and he was interrupted. They said the first night he got up, and he proclaimed that he is a prophet. As soon as he did that, he wanted to know who was supporting him. Abu Lahab, his uncle, said, we don't believe you, Muhammad. This is all magic. And the story goes that Arabs who were used to eating one whole goat per man, they had one goat and they had all the elders of the Qaba'il of Banu Hashim there. And that one risk of this da'wah to Prophet Muhammad sufficed for all of them. That one goat, they were used to eating each and every single one of them one goat. So Abu Lahab got up and he says, we don't believe you. Second day, the same thing happens. But on the third day, he says, look, Abu Talib is there. He says, what's wrong, O Muhammad? He says, uncle, every time I want to say something, Abu Lahab gets up and he tries falsifying me. So Abu Talib, who was on the first 2 days on the outside greeting people, he said, let me sit inside. As soon as Abu Lahab got up, he put his hand on his shoulder, he said, sit back down. Muhammad is saying something. And on that da'wah, they say he made the proclamation, and he said, who is going to be my wazir, my wali, my successor, my supporter, my right-hand man? And some narrations say, all 3 nights, if Prophet Muhammad had said these things, Imam Ali would get up. And then whenever he would get up, he would say, Ya Ali, you are my wazir, you are my khalifa, you are my successor, you are my naib, you are my janashin. But they could not doubt the character of Prophet Muhammad, that's the thing. They could not doubt his being truthful. Indeed, all of wahi, all of revelation is dependent on the truthfulness of Prophet Muhammad. How do I know what is Quran and what is not? Prophet Muhammad says this is Quran, that's not. Quran, and not just Hadith, Hadith Qudsi. Hadith Qudsi is the word of Allah in the words of Prophet Muhammad. We know this because it is said by Prophet Muhammad. They called him everything. They tortured him. And when he declared his message openly to the people, they were so vile. Abu Lahab and his wife, they would put thorns in his pathway. They would put dry wood in his pathway so he would get splinters. The Arab men, the leaders of the Quraysh, they were so hell-bent, sorry for pardon me for the language, they were so hell-bent in making sure that Prophet Muhammad never succeeded, that they would go to the children. There's an incident, they say to the children, when Muhammad comes your way, pelt him with stones and sticks and everything. And they did it multiple times. And what happened? Abu Talib got word of this. He went to the Quraysh. He says, you did this to Muhammad. And in Urdu they say, they said to him, Abu Talib, in bachon ka masala hai, inko bachon mein rehne do. This is the issue of kids. Let it remain among kids. They did that themselves. And he says, fine, I have a kid as well. Ali ibn Abi Talib. So he says, next time Prophet Muhammad starts to go out, he sends Imam Ali with him. And he breaks a rib, breaks an arm, breaks a leg of anybody who wants to hear Prophet Muhammad. That is the extent of their torture. That is the extent of their animosity to not just Prophet Muhammad, but Ahlul Bayt. I don't know if I said this before. When the final revelation came to Prophet Muhammad, he knew what that revelation was. At the first and the last Hajj of Prophet Muhammad after the declaration of Islam, Prophet Muhammad did Umrah before Islam, but the Hajj itself, what happened? He got the revelation in Mecca. He waited because he knew that the Quraysh would create a ruckus in Mecca and his whole wahi, the revelation that was revealed to him, would be lost. On the plains of Arafat, he receives that same revelation. Finally, when he receives it on the plains of Ghadir Khum, it is harsh. Ya ayyuha Rasul balligh. Say it. If you do not say it now, your whole prophecy would have been worthless. Will be worthless. And then Allah gives him a assurance by saying that your message, Allah will protect you from the mischief makers. So he makes this message. And indeed, we find that the characteristics of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam are the greatest proof after the Quran, alongside the Quran, of the sadaqat and the message of Prophet Muhammad. Please say Allah. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, when he was on his deathbed, he told Ahlul Bayt what was going to happen to them. Fatima al-Zahra, there's an incident where he is with, the Prophet is with Fatima al-Zahra in his last few days of his life, and he says something in her ear. And she starts crying. He says something else in her ear. Right after that, she smiles. She was asked what the Prophet said, and she said the first thing he said was, I am going to leave this world in a few days. And once she heard about the wafat, or the predicted wafat of her father, she started crying. Then when she smiled, she says he told her that she would be the first one to join him. The characteristics of Ahl al-Bayt are proof of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when Rasulullah was in his final days, he told the musibah that was going to happen to Ahl al-Bayt right after he was leaving this world. And he said, Ya Ali, do not pick up your sword at that time. What happened to Ahl al-Bayt, dear brothers and sisters? What happened to Ahl al-Bayt? Fadak, which was Fa'i, was stolen from Fatima al-Zahra. And Fatima al-Zahra had to go to the court of the tyrant, Khalifa, at that time. I say it a bit differently, but let me explain to you what history says. She went to the court of the Khalifa, which was Masjid al-Nabawi. It was just made into the courtyard where they would make the judicial decisions and the decisions of the state. Same way Masjid bin Umayyah in Damascus was Darbar Yazid. Same way. So she goes to the masjid. She demands fadak. They give her an argument saying that the prophets do not leave an heir. She said if that's the case, and the Quran says, and Sulaiman was Dawood's heir. They say we don't believe you in that. She was presenting them with Quran and they said we do not believe the Quran. These were the Muslims. She says, they say, give us a witness. She says, Ali. She says, for one man, for that to be the case, you need two male witnesses. She gives Hasanain. They say these are children. She gives Asma bint Umays. Asma bint Umays, the Prophet says, her testimony is equivalent to two men, or one full man. Her testimony is that strong that she is that equivalent. Look, these same individuals, Ali, Hasanain, and Fatima Zahra, were there in Mubahila. And Allah made their truthfulness known in Mubahila. And when Allah says, فَمَنْ حَاجَكَ فِيهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَكَ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ فَقُلْ تَعَالَوْا نَدْعُوا أَبْنَاءَنَا وَأَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَنِسَاءَنَا وَنِسَاءَكُمْ وَأَنفُسَنَا وَأَنفُسَكُمْ ثُمَّ نَبْتَهِلْ فَنَجْعَلْ لَعْنَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْكَاذِبِينَ. And when the truth has been revealed to you and they do not believe, tell them, let us bring our sons, you bring your sons. Let us bring our women, you bring your women. And ourselves and yourselves. And let us invoke the la'ana of Allah on the liars. The Quran believes in the sadaqat of Ali and Hasanain and Fatima Zahra so much that they were sufficient for the Christians. Let me put it this way. I said history says Fatima went to the court of the tyrant Khalifa. Let me make it a poetic license. Fatima dragged the Khalifa into her own courtyard. When they were saying, we do not believe you, he says, if you do not believe me, you are not even Muslim. Because the Quran believes in our sadaqah. You're not even considered to be close to the people of Najran because they believed in our sadaqah. And of course, the Quran proves the sadaqah of Ahlul Bayt every step that we go. When we talk about akhlaq of Ahlul Bayt being proof of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we notice that out of Rasulullah, when he was in Medina, he was the governor general, he was You could say Hakim Musharri. He had the position above everybody else amongst the affairs of the state and the affairs of the heart. After Rasulullah, it was only Amir al-Mu'mineen and Imam al-Hasan that were Khalifa, Zahiran. But although Imam al-Rida was made heir apparent, and some of the Imams were made heir apparent, they were killed before they could become the Khalifa. Imam Ali is the one I mentioned yesterday. When he is in ibadah, when he is in salat, he gives zakat. When he is Khalifa, his sadaqat is so high, his zuhud is so high, his love of Allah and his caring for the people is so high that my teacher, Dr. Mahmoud Ayub, he used to say that Ali was the one who had Dhul Fiqar in Badr and Uhud and Khaybar and Khandaq, in the battles of Islam. He was that valiant soldier of Islam. We find that same Ali who was chopping off heads in these battles, when it comes to breaking a piece of dry bread, he would use his knee to break that piece of dry bread. And they say that when he was in Badr, Uhud, Khaybar, Khandaq, Hunayn, all of these battles, that was taqat ilahiyah. That was divine power. When Ali was breaking the bread, he did not use the divine power that he possessed to break the bread, and he wanted to be treated like an ordinary person. If that is not the proof of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I don't know what is. By the way, I'm saying this, I don't want to get political, but I'm saying this as a note. Shia political theory, there have been many Shias who entered politics. Throughout the world, you had the Ali Buwaid, the Safavid, the Fatimids, and all of that. But Ja'fari Shia political theory, they say, after Imam Ali and Imam al-Hasan, there was only one man who gave a Ja'fari-based political theory. 1400 years later, that was Imam Khomeini. So much so that when he came back from France, Shaheed Mutahhari, he says, I feel like Imam Ali has come back. That was the level of the Zawad of Imam Khomeini, but he is the son of Fatima al-Zahra. This is Ali ibn Abi Talib. This is the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. That is Ali ibn Abi Talib. Imam Ali, his zuhud, his servitude to Allah is so high that he makes sure, look, when I say I'm Shia, we automatically assume Shia to Ali. But the word Shia was very commonly used in the Arab world during the time of Imam Ali for other groups as well. And I went to the Khilafah of Imam Ali, but I want to backtrack a little bit as well. There were Shi'at of Umar and Uthman. So much so that when the third Khalifa became Shaheed, according to our brother of Al-Sunnah, and his death was a big error in the history of Muslims. Every time Imam Ali would correct him, people throughout the outskirts of the Muslim Empire had come to Medina to protest the Khalifa and his governors. And Imam Ali would say, talk to these people, listen to their needs, and grant them their desires, because the people that you appointed were unjust and tyrants. But Marwan ibn Hakam, who was in the background, would say, no, don't do it. As soon as Imam Ali would say something, Uthman would say, yes, I will follow it, and he would make the proclamation, I'm going to do what Ali says. But as soon as his vizier would say something else, he would say something different. So much so that the third Khalifa created so much ruckus and rioting in Medina that he was barricaded in his palace. And Imam Ali sent Hassanain there to give him food and water. When he was killed, the third Khalifa, the outcry amongst the Muslims, first of all, when he was killed, one of the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, who was deprived of the sustenance she got from the first Khulafa, she says, who is going to be the one to kill this Jew? She said this. No names mentioned, but the same people who, when they were believing that the killing of Uthman was to their benefit, they killed him. When Imam Ali became Khalifa, they said, now it is time to Ali to take vengeance on the blood of Uthman. They became known as the Shia to Uthman. I'm saying this because look, Muawiyah was there, who was the main propagator against Imam Ali, saying that Imam Ali should have avenged the blood of Uthman. Talha, Zubayr, Aisha were all there. Imam Ali's justice was so high, regardless of what they did against him, he made sure that all the people in his kingdom and all the people in his Khilafat had a home. From the eastern edges of Khurasan to the eastern edges of Pakistan, western edges of Pakistan, eastern edges of Afghanistan, to the western edges of Egypt, from the northern tip of the provinces of Iran to the southern tip of Yemen, all of them had food, all of them had water, all of them had a house. If that is not a proof of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I don't know what is. We have politicians throughout the world today. They say we are going to be the anti-corruption politician, anti-establishment, all of that. I come from New York. You walk out in the streets of New York, Port Authority bus terminal, you'll find 10 homeless people lying there because nobody's there to give them help or sustenance. One country, I'm not just talking about this country. You go to Iraq and Karbala, how many orphans will come up to you and say, Sayyid, for me they say, Sayyid, ana al-yatim. How many widows will come, families of the shuhada who gave their life against fighting ISIS, they will say, Sayyid, bache haya yatim, bache haya man yatim. My children are yatim. One country, Iraq, Pakistan, these are one country. Imam Ali's Khilafah incorporates possibly dozens of modern countries, and he made sure that every one of the people in his Khilafah had a house, and they had food, and had water. His stuff and water. Imam Ali is that man of justice. When he's traveling, his shoe breaks. His sandal, it breaks. Abdullah ibn Abbas is there, his cousin, and Imam Ali asks him, how much is this shoe worth? Now, for a Shia of Ali, the shoe of Imam Ali, the sandal of Imam Ali is priceless. You could put $7 trillion fee for the shoe of Imam Ali, and the Shia would say that that's even less. But he says, Ya Ali, this is worthless, it's broken, it's nothing. He says, no, it's worth more than that. He said, 1 or 2 dirham. Imam Ali says, this shoe is worth more to me than the whole Khilafah, unless I can use the Khilafah and establish justice. Imam Ali after the Prophet is the biggest proof of the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When he is Khalifa, different, and I was talking to this with Brother Ali, Imam Ali when he's Khalifa, he has to be the example for all non-ma'asum people who are going to gain political power. So he cannot act on ilm al-ghayb when he is Khalifa, he acts on ilm al-zahiri. When he is Khalifa, they say in Kufa, Bibi Zainab, I don't know if it's Bibi Zainab al-Kubra or Zainab al-Sughra, they say one of his daughters was Zainab al-Sughra as well. She went to Bayt al-Mal and she got a necklace as a loan. Imam Ali went when he saw his daughter wearing this. He says, where did you get this? He says, I got it as a loan from Bayt al-Mal. He goes to the man in charge of the public treasury and he says, if it would If it was anything other than a loan, I would have punished you for it. Don't give my daughters extra because they're my daughters. Talha and Zubair, they come to Imam Ali. Imam Ali is in his office. He has a lamp or a light, a candle. You could say charag. In Urdu Farsi, we say charag. Yeah. So he had it on. They come to him. They say, Ya Ali, we have a mas'ala for you. He says to them, is it a personal matter or is it a matter of the state? They say it's a personal matter. He turns it off. He lights another one. They say, well, Ali, why did you do this? He says, the first one I bought with public money. This was for public good. The second one I bought with my own money. Since you said this was a personal matter, I refuse to use the public good for my personal matter. That is the zuhad and the characteristics of Ahlul Bayt alayhi wasalam. That is the level of submission to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And dear brothers and sisters, we are awaiting Al-Hujjat ibn Hassan al-Askari. Please do Allah ta'ala. You can recite a louder salawat than that, I know that. One of my friends, when I was back in Hartford Seminary, his name was Murtaza Razazadeh. He was from the brother who was saying he's from Kashan. And now he is doctor as well, but he was studying, he was in Qom, and he came to Hartford Seminary as a part of what they call their International Peacemaker Program, where they exchange students from. They used to do it before the sanctions and everything from Iran, but I don't know what to do from now anymore, or even if they do it. But they had students, talaba from the house of Qom, come to Hartford Seminary, do their masters and PhDs, and then they could go back to Iran to do further research work in academia. I asked him the different rawaya as to what will happen when Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman returns. The one says, I believe there are 25, 27 doors of knowledge. When Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman comes, he will open, when he comes, only one or two of those doors of knowledge will be open. I'm not saying 2022 in America, no. I'm saying if he comes right now, that means only two doors have been opened. If he comes 100 years from now, 200 years from now, at that time of his Dhuhur al-Am, only two doors will be open. When he comes, he will open all the other remaining doors of knowledge. Imagine the scientific, the ethical, the moral, the humanitarian, the environmental, all this revolution that will occur when Sahib al-Zaman comes. But then I asked him, will he be writing biology textbooks, or physics textbooks, or mathematics textbooks, or logic textbooks? He says no. He says Imam, when he comes, he will raise the aql of bashariyat so much that they will automatically accept the need for Imam himself. We need to raise the aql of bashariyat, so that when Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman alayhi salam comes, that we are ready for him. Dear brothers and sisters, tonight I want to talk to you about an individual who there was no second to after Karbala. And that is none other than Ali al-Akbar. Ali Akbar alayhi salam, Imam al-Husayn's 18-year-old son. Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam, when all of his sons, when they were born, he named them Ali. And all of his daughters, that when they were born, he named them Fatima. That is because he wanted to make sure that the name Ali and Fatima continues throughout the lineages of his Shia, throughout the world. Dear brothers and sisters, it is a very sad relationship to talk about. The relationship between a sister and a brother. When on the 28th, 27th of Rajab, Imam al-Hussein gets his caravan to leave Medina, Fatima al-Sughra has Ali and Akbar promise her that he will come get her after the whole battle has been done. He will come get her. Ali and Akbar, he is the exact replica of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In Karbala, Imam Hussein had a regular mu'adhin, but on the day of Ashura, when the time for Fajr Salat came, he says, Ali Akbar, I want you to be the one to recite Adhan. Imam al-Hussein, when he says this, he's giving the enemies the clue as to who they are fighting. He is sending the one who looks exactly like Rasulullah, dear brothers and sisters. He is giving us the indication as to whose side do we want to be on. If I am the follower of Ali Akbar, that if I want to be on the side of Rasulullah, that I should be the first one, that when Fajr comes, I stand up on my Musalla. Ali Akbar, they say, when he recited the Adhan of Fajr, Ahlul Bayt, the women and children of Imam al-Hussein's army, they heard the voice of Rasulullah reciting Adhan. Ali Akbar was the exact copy of Prophet Muhammad in his way, in his look, in his seerah, in his life, every which way. He was the exact copy of Prophet Muhammad. They say he recited Adhan, the woman could not bear it. They say that the woman could not bear it. They started crying and lamenting. They started beating their heads at their chest in matam. They could not bear the Adhan of Ali Akbar. On the day of Ashura was a very difficult test, dear brothers and sisters. In other battles we see in history, Al Muhammad were the first ones to go and fight. But in Karbala they say that they went last. They were the last ones to go and fight. But the reason for that was in Karbala they say, living was harder in Karbala. So Al Muhammad would send their companions to die in the way of Rasulullah, in the way of Imam Hussein, so that they could get the drink from Hawd Kawthar. On the day of Ashura, all the companions, they would go. Hur went, Habib went, Muslim ibn al-Awsajah went, Haider ibn al-Qayn went, Buraydi Hamadani went, John went, Wahab went. And there came a time when there was no one from the companions of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein left. The Maqta, they record two different hadith. Some say, and the most sahih Maqtal is that Imam al-Hussein, the first one that Imam al-Hussein sends from his family is his 18-year-old son Ali Akbar. They say Imam al-Hussein, when Ali Akbar came to Imam al-Hussein to ask permission to go fight, Imam al-Hussein said nothing. All he did was lower his head. Ali Akbar took that as the permission. They say Imam al-Hussein gave Ali Akbar permission to go fight. When Ali Akbar would go fight, when he would mount his horse, he would hear somebody from the background. He turned around and he saw his father Imam al-Hussein following him. He says, Father, you already let me go to the battlefield. You gave me the idhn to lose my life on your way, Father. Why are you following me? Imam al-Hussein says, Oh, Ali Akbar, if only you had a youthful son like yourself, then you will know. Then you will know what it feels like to be a father like Hussein, bidding farewell to Ali Akbar. Dear brothers and sisters, they say Imam al-Hussein was watching Ali Akbar fight, and the Arabs had a tradition, they would fight people one by one. And they say Imam al-Hussein was looking at the Maqtal, and Layla was not able to see the Maqtal. She did not want to see what was happening to her dearly beloved son. So she was looking at Imam al-Hussein's face. They say Imam al-Hussein was fine for some time, but at one time his face turned pale. Layla was looking at Imam al-Hussein. She says, what happened to my son Ali Akbar? She says, what happened to Ali Akbar? He says he is fine right now, but I see a man who wants to kill him, and surely he will kill him. So go to the tent and pray to Allah, for surely the prayers of the mother are accepted in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Layla goes to the tent, dear brothers and sisters. She goes to the tent. You know what she prays? She says, "Oh Allah, the one who united Yusuf with Yaqub, unite Hussein with his son Ali Akbar." They say her prayers became accepted. Ali Akbar did come back, but she didn't know what he was going to ask. She didn't know what he was going to ask. He came back and he says, Father, you have seen me fight. I would fight even more braver, more valiantly if I had a drink of water. Imam Hussein says, I don't have any water. But if you want, you can suck the nourishment from my tongue. Their tongues embrace. Ali Akbar, they say, he moves back and he says, Father, your tongue is drier than mine. Father, your tongue is drier than mine. Ali Akbar goes to the battlefield, dear brothers and sisters. They had the idea that nobody could fight Ali Akbar one-on-one. So they surrounded him. Sinan ibn al-Anas, he had an arrow. He went from the behind of Ali Akbar and he threw the arrow at the chest of Ali Akbar. Ali Akbar falls. He says, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdillah. He says to his father, I bid you my final farewell. Imam Hussein, he starts to cry. He starts to fall. They say he would get up a little bit. He would fall again. He would move. He would crawl to the body of Ali Akbar. But they say, after the shahadat of Ali Akbar, Imam Hussein had lost his eyesight. He could not see anymore. Ali Akbar, who was the Qurratul Ayn of Imam al-Hussein's eye, the apple of the eyes of Imam Hussein, had left this world. He says to his son, Ali Akbar, keep calling me, I cannot see anymore. When he reaches the body of Ali Akbar, dear brothers and sisters, he sees that Ali Akbar is hiding something in his chest. He sees Ali Akbar is hiding something in his chest. They say that Imam al-Hussein wanted to remove Ali Akbar's hands, but Ali Akbar would relent and say no. He opened his hands and he saw the head of the arrow that had pierced the chest and the liver of Ali Akbar. Imam al-Hussein, he picks up the arrow, he turns to Najaf and he says, Oh Father, Ya Ali, you are the one who lifted the gates of Khaybar. Come see Hussein lifting a spear from the chest of his son. Dear brothers and sisters, Ali Akbar's musibah did not end there, dear brothers and sisters. They say at that same time, a letter carrier came from Medina. They say he said to Imam Hussein, Are you Hussein ibn Ali? Fatima al-Sughra had described the whole incident to them about how he was going to meet her father. She says, yes. He says, I have a letter from Fatima al-Sughra for you. He says, he opens the letter. She says to him, Father, right about now, Ali Asghar would be starting to crawl. Ali Akbar promised me, Father, it looks like my brother Akbar has forgotten about me. He promised me that he will come and get me. Imam al-Hussein writes, at this point, Fatima al-Sughra, there is no Ali Akbar, there is no Ali Asghar, there is no Qasim. I am your father Hussein, left alone in this desert land. They say when Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam bought, I just recited part of the shahadat of Imam Hussein. They say when he bought the body of Ali Akbar back to the tents, they say that the women and children started crying, but the one who cried the most was his auntie Zainab, the one who raised him. She would cry, Wa Muhammada, Wa Aliya, Wa Hamzata, Wa Ja'fara. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. سيعلم الذين غدروا أي منقلب ينقلبون مات الحسين.
Ya Hussein.
Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein.